Welcome to Community Insight. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Coles. We're here bringing information to our community here on the Community Insight. So we're praying that you receive this information. Please get your pen, your paper ready. And today we have another good guest. It's my first time meeting her, but I can tell you she has some energy. Her name is Ms. Wanda. I'm going to let her do an introduction, who she is and what she does. We can go right into the broadcast. Good afternoon or good morning, whatever time they're watching the broadcast. We'll just say greeting. Welcome, Miss Wanda. Please tell her who you are and so they can know your name and what you do.
Terrific. Hi, good morning. My name is Wanda Montano. I am a proud ECU pirate, graduating way back in 1974. I have a degree in social work. I have an MBA in marketing. I currently work for Community Crossroads Center, which is the homeless shelter here in Greenville, and I function as the housing counselor there, and I'm working with folks in the community who don't live in the shelter, but they're in the community, to prevent them from being evicted and from experiencing homelessness.
Wow. And I know with the shelter have been Community Crossroad, we call it. It was called the Greenville Shelter sometimes.
For a long time, yes.
Yeah, and I would say that I'm so proud of the work that's being done there. Going back when Lynn James was there, when I got involved, which put together which We Care program, and then ECU took over, not ECU, Pitt Community College continued with Dr. Brassworth and Ernest Lee, and helping them with that. But you also have so many programs that you do. And the first time, let me also first say this: the shelter is beautiful.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
I'm telling you, it is. Wash it and dry.
Absolutely.
And all. I just want to tell you, it's just a beautiful.
It is. It's a beautiful facility. We opened it in 2015. We have dormitories for males and females. We can serve, in a pre-COVID environment, 59 men and 24 women, and we're currently running at half capacity because of COVID. Unfortunately, our family units are closed at the moment because the way that the units are built, there is a central living room where all 4 family units feed into, and there was no way to socially distance with the children in that room. So we have closed those for the moment. So currently we're just serving single adult men and women.
Okay, and it's and we know we need it. It's like one of the only shelters towards this area here, because it's not one in Martin County, but they do have a small one in Beaufort County. They kind of put together.
Yes, and it's just it just reopened, and they also have one in Tarboro, and that's the closest one, and there's one in Wilson. Well, and that's about it.
But I'm going to say this, and they may get mad at me, Ms. Wanda. We got the most prettiest shelter.
We do. Absolutely.
We get the most prettiest, nicest state of the art with those big TVs and the food, and then the people that comes and volunteer.
Yes.
To come and do the food for the people. I know St. John does that. I know St. James. I don't want to miss no church. There's a lot of churches does that.
We have 41 churches and organizations in Pitt County who do either breakfast or dinner service for us. The food for breakfast comes from a grant from Vidant, but dinner is contributed 100% by these organizations. Pre-COVID, they were able to prepare on site in the commercial kitchen that we have. In our current COVID environment, they are preparing the food off site and bringing it into us around 5 o'clock, and then we serve it. The residents after dinner have the opportunity to remain in the dining hall and watch TV and socialize with each other.
It's such a great atmosphere over there. But you also don't just help the people while they're in the shelter as they get up. There's other programs that we want the community to know what you do. Okay. Because there may be some folks that's not in the shelter, but there's some resources that you have to help them.
That's correct. So I administer a program called Work First Housing Assistance, and we work with families who are at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. And if they have minor children in the household, they have to have some kind of income, and they have to be either on the verge of being evicted, or they have already been evicted and they're searching for new housing. So what I do are 2 things. If they're homeless and if they found a new place to live, then I help them with security deposits and potentially the first month's rent to help them get reestablished and to maintain that family unit. If they are in current housing and they're just behind, then I work with the landlord to see if I can pay back up to 3 months of their back rent to catch them up. We also make referrals for them to a couple of organizations in town who can also help with the utility deposits. So it's been really interesting. And then the one thing that's very critical to our program is a sustainability requirement. So as I'm working with them, I'm taking into consideration all of the resources that are coming into the home to determine, can they sustain that situation going forward. And I'd like to tell you a success story, because I love to talk about Miss Betty. Miss Betty was a lady who had moved into some housing a couple of years ago in a situation where she was married. She subsequently, her marriage was terminated, so she lost that income. She then had a stroke, and then she had COVID. And so she was like 4 months behind, and clearly could not sustain what was going forward based on her income. We were able to help her find income-assisted housing in a complex in Winterville and move her. So her rent went from $750 a month, which she couldn't afford, to $155. Wow. And I had a volunteer who helped pay her utility deposit. So she's one of my success stories of making that sustainability analysis and saying, yes, I need to move, I need to do something different, and was able to work with me and to do that. So those are the kinds of success stories we like to talk about. Yeah.
And I like hearing stories of people that at one area, because that actually help them get through it, because I do know there's folks that may be making just enough money, but they really can't afford their rent. You know,
right.
The rent is very high in this area, but the salary doesn't connect with it, you know.
No, it's really a challenge. I mean, most of the folks that I see, their income level is between $10 and $15 an hour. And if you stop to think about $10 an hour at 40 hours a week, that's $400 a week, that's $1,600 a month, and if you're paying $600 or $700 a month in rent, that's really a sustainability issue. But they're also receiving nutrition assistance from DSS, so I can add into the food stamps and some of the other programs that they're getting, so that I can make that sustainability argument for them going forward. And we do a little bit of counseling about credit and managing their budgets and that kind of thing. But as I had said to you earlier, my concern is that the programs that we have in place don't just address the symptoms and try to fix the problem, but that we also look at what are the underlying causes. And I think the two things that I'm seeing in Pitt County, and it's probably true every place else, are what I would call a lack of financial literacy and a lack of legal literacy. And so if you'll permit me, I'll talk about that a little bit.
Please do.
So from a financial literacy perspective, is budgeting. How do I budget my money? What does it mean if I have a bad credit score? How does that impact me in terms of a barrier to finding housing? Because many landlords in town do pull a credit check on you when you go to rent from them. And if you've got an eviction, if you've got bad credit, they're going to take a second look at whether they want to, rent to you. And I will say that in a pre-pandemic world, they might not have been as picky. In a post-pandemic world, the world we're in now, I'm finding that the landlords are being far more picky, if you will, about who they're taking, because they have been burned through the pandemic with the loss of revenue coming forward. So that's sort of on the financial side. So I do try to sit and talk with my clients about how they budget their money. And if, for example, they've got some kind of recurring Social Security or recurring, SSI payments, things that are coming in the door, I try to counsel them about putting that aside to pay your rent, and then your wages become the other things that your fund money, if you will. But let's make sure that you keep that income that we know is going to come in every month to cover that rent. From a legal literacy perspective, it's about managing a lease. Many times I find my folks don't understand what it means for them to sign a lease. It is a legal contract. It is a binding contract, and the landlord can take you to court over violating that contract. And what that means is that if you've signed a lease for 1 year, you have to pay 12 months. You are obligated for the 12 months. Typically, the lease converts to a month-to-month after that. And so what we're finding is that the landlords are, because they're frustrated with the lack of payment for some of these months, that when they can convert them to the month-to-month, they're using that 30-day out and going, okay, you're on a month-to-month lease, I'm choosing not to renew your lease on the 31st day, so you have to get out. And that's a way for them to get around the eviction moratorium, which takes me to another issue. So last year, at the beginning of the pandemic, the Centers for Disease Control issued a moratorium on evictions as a result of COVID, people losing their jobs and income as a result of COVID. And what the moratorium says is, it doesn't relieve you from paying the rent. You have to pay as much as you can, as often as you can. You have to seek government assistance for your rent, and you will still owe the rent at the end of the period that when the moratorium expires, which right now is set to expire on March 31st. Now, we believe that they will extend the moratorium another 60 days till the end of May, and that's working its way through the regulatory agencies in Washington. But right now, it's March 31st. But many people have misinterpreted that to say, oh, I don't have to pay my rent. And what they don't understand is rental property is a business. You know that. You're a businessman. So as a landlord, you still have to pay the mortgage. You still have to pay your insurance, your property management fees. You have to make repairs. And so there seems to be a lack of a willingness, a partnership. I need to work with the landlord as much as I can, as opposed to just saying, oh, I don't have to pay my rent. And that's not what the moratorium says. And so that's part of the other counseling that I've been doing with the clients as well, to explain to them that they still have to pay the rent. And of course, coming to my program, there was also Project Hope through Trillium. There's Back at Home through Trillium. DSS is getting ready to roll out a new grant. The city of Greenville is getting ready to roll out a new grant that will help folks with that, to try to help them catch up. The other interesting thing is that the landlords are also looking at the lease. They're looking for loopholes, if you will. So do you have an unauthorized pet? Is there somebody living in the house who's not on the lease? And so they're looking for ways to go through that eviction process. And then the other thing is, if you get the eviction notice, please show up in court. Not showing up in court doesn't mean you're not getting evicted. It just means that the landlord's got to go through yet a second process. So if you don't show up, you get convicted in absentia. And you don't have the opportunity to argue your side of what's going on, to explain that you've lost your job because of COVID, or any extenuating circumstances that you have. And the sheriff is still going to find you, because all he's got to do at some point is just put the writ on the door. If you don't vacate the premise you have 10 days to appeal once you didn't go to court. But again, many people don't understand those rights, and of course, these folks really don't have the resources in many cases to hire a lawyer. But there is a resource out there. It's called Legal Aid. So we have an office in Greenville, Legal Aid, where you can go and receive legal assistance from them in managing that eviction notice. And they will represent you in court. They will talk to you and work through your issues. And that is a free service to our residents. But again, if they've not done the appeal, then at the end of the 10 days, if they've not vacated the premise, then the landlord has to spend more money, go back to court again, and get a writ of possession. That then results in the lockout in about 7 days. So, and then you're homeless. And then what do you do? Because you're not going to find a place to live in 7 days. I'm lucky if I can find you something in 30. I have one girl I've been working with for 2 months. So it's just, and that brings me to my last point, which is we have a lack of affordable housing in Pitt County. I don't have places to even put people who have good credit, who can afford those kinds of things. And so we have an eviction diversion conversation call every other Wednesday with key stakeholders in the community, different agencies who work in the space. And I threw this out a couple weeks ago as if you look at the demographics of students who are going to be coming to college. And again, I hear this from the administrators at ECU, we are going to see a drop in enrollment at ECU because there just aren't that many children coming to college because our population is shifting, which means we're going to have a glut of student housing. And you add to things, some of the construction that's going on in towns. So what do we do with that glut of student housing? Is there a way for us to take some of those complexes and reuse them for our lower income housing folks? And I do know that UNC Charlotte did this with some of their housing. So I've been throwing that out there, trying to get somebody in the community to say, yes, this works.
Let me say that you hit a lot of points, and it's key. We have the lack of the funds that most folks bring in. Number one, of the salary, they couldn't afford the apartments, and we don't have a lot of affordable apartments. We do have a lot of students' apartments, and we continue building. And I want to tell you thank you, because you're actually from here and you're back, and when and I think that I know that God always have a plan for all of our lives. Sometimes we can be one place and bring us back, but just to hear everything you're doing and what you're putting in place, that's what we need in this community.
Thank you.
When you mention about people don't understand. You got to pay your rent. You got. We did have. We consider it a disaster of the coronavirus, but it didn't stop people. There's some people who was getting paid anyhow and still didn't pay any rent.
Right.
And and they said, well, they're gonna help pay your rent, and they looking at the president. He releasing these trillions of dollars are coming down, but it's not to pay your rent. You've been working to pay your rent. If you know you have the money to pay your rent, and then folks who have received stimulus checks and they're receiving it, and I always say, money in the hand of a fool will soon depart.
Well,
So they don't know how to budget their money.
Right. So that's a perfect example. This morning I talked with a young woman. So she has 4 children, which means she got $7,000 in stimulus money. And she's calling me, asking me for assistance, and she's asking me for a referral to help her pay her back utilities. And I said, ma'am, based on my calculations, you just got $7,000 in stimulus checks. Why can't you use some of that money to pay these back utilities? And she goes, oh, you think I should do that? Yes, I do. And this goes back to the financial literacy things. And like, folks, you've been handed this money. Let's go do something with it. Pay your bills, let's think about paying your rent forward. So I had another client that I assisted a couple months ago, and I followed up with him because nice young man, and he paid 4 months of his rent forward.
Wow.
With his stimulus check. So he's forward thinking, going, okay, because he had lost 2 jobs in the last year, just different things with hours being reduced and things like that. So he's like, I need to get ahead of this. So that's what he did with his stimulus check. So let's talk about how do we help our folks. So I've had some conversations with Pitt Community College and with some other stakeholders about how can I do some training classes in the community. How can and again, I have space at the shelter to hold classes if I can get people to come. We will, I'll get it if it's a local church, one of the churches in your network. We'll come out there. We'll talk to them about, well, these are the kinds of things we want you to think about how you manage your money. So that and many of them, for example, are also with the latest act, they're also going to be getting child care credits every month. So that's going to be monthly income coming into them based on the number of children they have in the household. So that's going to be another source of income. Okay, that's money you need to be spending on your utilities and on your rent and that kind of thing. And it's not just frivolous party money. Oh, look, I got this extra, $300 a month. Let's go have a party. They're getting extra food stamps right now. Their foods, they've been getting that, and that was part of the new thing as well. So if you're getting $929 in food stamps, you're now getting $1,029 in food stamps. So there are resources out there to help them make ends meet.
I would say this, and very, very bold in how I speak on certain things. There's some people just trying to get over, and not trying to say what I need to do to help myself. There's programs like saying that before the woman who receives $7,000, you pay your bills.
Right.
This is not a Christmas bonus that you say, well, I earned that and that's supposed to go into my IRA raw account. This is money to pay. But I also know that there's programs you have that there's people that does have actually needs that to help them with their budget. They may be in an area, but they had to have income to work. And not everybody, and I hope I say this correctly, because it's my opinion, not everybody gets a stimulus check. I don't really know how that whole format works out, and like saying that then maybe everybody get a stimulus check, but I know that I don't get one because my bracket is too high.
Yeah.
We don't get one.
But the clients that I work with do.
Okay.
Because they're 200% of the federal poverty level. And for example, to give you an idea, 200% of the federal poverty level for a family of 4 is $52,000.
Okay.
Okay. So the federal poverty level then is about $12,000.
So if they're getting stimulus check, the first thing I think they should really have, somebody should kind of help them with their budget and how to pay your bills. Because this is the third check they got.
This is the third check.
Okay, I'm trying to get my memory right. The shop is nice sometimes. I'm trying to rememorize.
Yeah, this is the third check.
So a third check that they've been helping them. But then there's funds comes to other agencies. So you have folks who probably just didn't pay their rent. And then they would tell you, and I know you get this here, and I get this, well, I got to pay my car payment.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, are you going to live in your car?
Right.
I got to pay my car payment, or they're going to take my car. A car is a luxury. There's a bus. I know we only got 6 or 7, but a car is an luxury, and maybe sometimes you don't need to have that nice, pretty car. I mean,
Yes, sir.
you may get something like a couple $100 where you could pay straight out $2,000 or $1,000 just to
Absolutely.
get you around transportation. If you don't have air conditioning, keep the window down.
Well,
you know,
you
what I'm
know,
saying? They all got heat.
And Greenville Transit is still providing free transit right now.
Wow, I didn't even know
So
that.
the buses have been free for over a year as a result of the pandemic, and they are still free. So you can ride anywhere you want to ride in Greenville for free. Because
That-
normally we buy bus tickets for our residents in the shelter, and we've not had to buy bus tickets for over a year. So, and they're currently free. Don't know how long that's going to last, but still, there are options for transportation in the community. From that perspective, and again, I do understand though, if you're living in Ayden or you're living in, Fountain or someplace else, the transportation's not there. But you're right. I mean, it's back to that financial literacy of what kind of vehicle can I really afford? What kind of apartment can I really afford? Those kinds of things that are, how can we help our folks understand budgeting, and hopefully somewhere along the lines of the public school system is going to put a class in that teaches them how to budget. I don't know whether they have or not, but that would be lovely.
So what I'm hearing from you, and let me make sure I got it correct. Right now, you're here. There's certain programs you have to help those
Right.
that can help them with their rent and cost, and also you willing to, and as the audience listening, you're willing to help them with budgeting classes.
Sure.
If a church have a place, and we still got to wear our masks, whatever.
That's
we'll
right.
talk about that. But to be able to do work with your budget, budget class, finding out, and you're right, legal aid has been helping. Leslie, she's just been a dynamite. I thank you,
Yes.
Leslie, for legal aid.
Yes.
She is a superwoman
Yeah.
out there getting things done and making sure if a landlord is trying to evict you of certain areas that you did your part. Leslie stepping in.
Yes.
She have stepped in for many cases.
Yeah, but we have conversations, as I said, we have dialogue calls among the different agencies because we're looking to make sure that when we're serving a client that we're bringing the appropriate resources to bear, that it's not just they've come to me. So I might call somebody at another agency and say, I'm working with this person and here are the circumstances. Do you have anything to assist them as well? And that's what we do with legal aid and Pitt County Planning and different ones that are working in this space. But, it was interesting, one of our colleagues last week said, but they need to have some skin in the game too. It can't always be the agencies paying everything. It can't always be us giving everything away. We would like for them to say, okay, we've got some skin in the game. And so that's made some of us stop and think, well, maybe instead of paying the full rent that they owe back, maybe we say we pay 2 months and you have to pay a month. You have to have some skin in the game here. And especially with the stimulus checks, because that's a real. I mean, I had somebody call me yesterday, and based on her family size, she's getting $11,200 in stimulus checks, and I said,
Whoa.
I'm sorry, I cannot help you.
Wow.
I just flat out said no, because that's just. And again, one of the struggles we have is if you look at some of the entitlement programs like food stamps, like TANF, and different things, there are resource limits on those programs in terms of how much you can have in the bank. If you think about Medicaid and you want to put grandma in the nursing home, you got to do the spend down. If you recall, you can only have $2,500 in the bank. So some of these stimulus checks theoretically kick these people off those eligibility programs, but that's another morass that I don't think we're even going to try to address at the moment.
Well,
but I want to find them a place to live. I want to teach them how to manage their money better because there are ways to do that, especially with some of the other resources we're wrapping their income with. And I want to teach them how to read a lease and what it means and what their obligations are as a member of society, to have a balance between your issues and the landlord, because I think they have skin in the game.
Okay. You have to have skin in the
Right.
game. Miss Wanda, I tell you, you have a lot of energy and a lot of
Thank you.
direction. I want to thank you. One of the things I want to share as we're coming to a closing, if you would contact Ms. Wanda, her number is 252-752-0829.
Right.
That is the community Crossroads, helping with budget classes. If anybody say, hey, you have a small group, we can get together. You heard her. She says she will come to the area, do a group. Also, for those who are listening that can help donate, please donate to the community Crossroad. They need funds. They need help at all times, especially during a pandemic. And they always there when it get cold or it get very
Yes.
hot. We want to thank the community Crossroad and all the partner agencies like United Way and others. But please,
Right.
please Support them. God bless, and I see you at our next broadcast.
Oh, that.